Hi, this is Stephanie Bolton with Healing Sounds Music Therapy. This video, I wanted to talk to you about the stages of grief. Quite often I get calls from potential clients who are going through a grieving process, and so I thought it might be useful to talk about the stages of grief. Generally, it's considered that there are 5 different stages of grief. And if you're experiencing any kind of loss, whether it's a job loss or the loss of a loved one, um, any kind of significant loss in your life, a divorce, maybe you've had to relocate and move, and so you're downsizing your house. These are all losses, things that are significant to us. So it doesn't just have to be a death that causes grief. It can be any kind of loss that happens in life. And we all go through those from time to time. We don't escape life without experiencing grief or loss at some point. So the 5 stages of grief it starts with denial, then there's anger, and then bargaining, which you can think of as the if only stage. So if only I had gone to the doctor sooner, or if only I had exercised more, or if only I'd been able to repair that relationship. So it's those kinds of if only or what if kinds of thinking. That's the bargaining stage. Then there's depression. And finally, there's acceptance. So even though there are 5 stages of grief, we don't always go through them in order. And so it's not like a checklist where you're working on a project and okay, if I want to build a bookshelf, first I have to buy the wood, and then I have to get the nails, and then I have to measure things, and then I have to cut things. The stages of grief aren't a checklist like that. You don't just go through denial and then you're finished and you check it off the list. And then you go to anger and you finish it and you check it off the list. The stages of grief itself is a process. We hear it talked about, the process of grieving. And that's very true, because you may not start at denial. Maybe you're going to start at bargaining and say, if only I had done this differently, or if only we had done that together, then this wouldn't have happened. And it's okay to skip over stages. That happens quite often. It's okay and normal to experience one stage of grief and then move on to another and then go back to that stage that you've already experienced. That happens quite frequently, that we'll move through anger and get to that place of bargaining and then move back to anger. And so that's quite common, that people experience grief in many different ways, and they skip around all of these stages before eventually reaching acceptance, hopefully reaching acceptance. So it's important to remember that grief is a process. Grief takes a lot of time. I know some people personally who've experienced a significant loss of a loved one in the past year, and as they approach that first year anniversary, they think, oh, well, I should be done with this by now, right? I should be accepting. I should be happy. I should have moved on. And the truth is that when we experience significant loss in life, it takes time to move through all of those stages to make peace with all of what we've lost and what we've experienced. So go easy on yourself if you're in the grief process. Don't put a timetable on it. Don't limit yourself and think, oh, well, by 1 year I need to be all done with this and moving on and whatever that looks like to you. Give yourself time, because it takes a lot of time. Generally, if you're going through the grief process, you don't necessarily need to be in counseling or therapy for that. Generally, most people, our human condition enables us to handle those experiences, those feelings, the normal stages of grief, using our friends and our family as our support system during that time. When you need to consider counseling or therapy for it is if you get stuck. If you find that after a significant period of time you're still feeling really angry about it, or you're still feeling really depressed about it, or maybe you've never moved out of the denial stage, those are the times that you need to seek out some help, especially if the grief is starting to affect your life and your relationships with other people. So, as an example, if you're feeling like you're stuck in that anger stage, maybe you're starting to lash out at everyone around you, at work, at home, and it's not really related to anything that's going on at work or at home. You just tend to be angry all the time. Those are the times when you need to seek out some help to help you work through the stages of grief. And again, that's normal. That tends to be where short-term therapy is really effective, because the therapist can then target, you and the therapist can target specifically what's going on, and where you're a little bit off track in dealing with the grief and the loss. So hopefully this has been really helpful for you, this information. I thought it might be useful. I get phone calls about grief and loss quite often. So I thought if I made this video and put it out there, then that would help people know what to expect if they're going through that process. And if you have any other tips or suggestions, you can leave them in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. And otherwise, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Bye-bye.